So Black Myth Wukong has garnered a lot of attention over the last year or two, looking like it could potentially be a genuine Game of the Year contender if it is as good as it actually looks. But despite that, there are definitely a few concerns out there, both from myself and plenty of people in the gaming community. And so today I wanted to address some of my biggest concerns about the game, as although I think it looks really good and I do think it is a Game of the Year contender, I don't think it's quite a guarantee that it's as good as we actually hope it is. Now, my first reason for kind of being concerned about why this game may not live up to all the hype is that realistically it is coming from a completely unproven studio, which is always a little bit of a concern when a game looks as good as it does in all of the trailers. Black Myth Wukong is being made by a company called Game Science, who have only ever made one game before, that being Art of War Red Tides, which came out back in 2016. It's mostly an unheard of game. I had literally never heard of it before until I started researching for this video. However, with that being said, that game does have some pretty decent ratings at an average of about a 7 out of 10 across multiple different sites. So it's not like that game was an absolute bust or anything, but my concern sort of comes from how does a company with little to no experience make a game that looks this freaking good? Now, another red flag when I was doing the research for this is that on Wikipedia, Game Science doesn't even have a hyperlink. I literally searched Black Myth Wukong and just looked at the Wikipedia page, and this studio is so small and so unknown essentially that they don't even have a hyperlink on that page. There is no Wikipedia page for Game Science, and I know Wikipedia isn't the be all and end all, but that to me is a bit of a red flag if a company is so small and new essentially that they don't even have a Wikipedia page. There is such little information out there about them, and again, how is a company that new and inexperienced making a game that looks this good? When the game was first announced, and to be fair, it's been announced for quite some time now, it's been a good 3 or so years since they've actually been showing off gameplay and stuff. But realistically, over those last couple of years, a lot of people were confused if this game is actually real or not, or whether it was one of those games that kind of looks too good to be true. When we look at games like that Day Before game that came out, I believe earlier this year, or maybe it was the end of last year, it looked really, really good in all the trailers and stuff, and that ended up being pretty much a complete scam where the end result of the game looked completely different to what we'd seen in the trailers, and people have been pretty much concerned about the same thing for this game, that it looks really, really good in all of the trailers, yet considering it's kind of coming out of nowhere, there was that chance that it could be pretty similar to a game like The Day Before. Now, the good thing is that journalists have had their hands on the game already and they have praised it, so we no longer have to worry about this game literally being fake or anything like that. It is real, people are praising it when they're playing it and stuff like that, but that doesn't guarantee that it's going to be as good as it looks, because obviously when it comes to the sections of the game that journalists have played so far, those are very curated by the developers. They're giving them pretty much the best parts of the game to play that they've put the most work into. So although I don't think the game is going to be fake or anything like that, I'm not some sort of conspiracy theorist, I think the game is going to be decent, but there is that little bit of concern there that this is, like I said, coming from an unproven studio that we've never really seen anything from them before, and when the game looks as good as it does, that is just kind of a bit of a red flag that it may not be as good as we actually think it will be. Now, something else that's sort of in line with that is that the game looks absolutely phenomenal, but again, coming from an unproven studio, will this game launch in a stable state, or is it going to be another one of those games that launches with terrible performance issues like so many games have over the last probably 3 to 5 years now? Now, in their defense, they have been showing long periods of gameplay for this game for a good 3 years now. There's a lot of clips out there that are like, 15 to 20 minutes long of gameplay, and these are on their YouTube channel from, up to 3 years ago. So the fact that it looked that good 3 years ago, that means they probably had a lot of time to actually work on it during that period and make it even better. And with that comes a lot of optimization and stuff too. So I don't think the game is going to launch in a bad state or anything like that. But again, a game that looks this good from an unproven studio, there's always that concern that it could launch in a bit of a buggy or messy state. You look at games like Cyberpunk, for example, that game launched so poorly, and yet that came from one of the most experienced developers in the industry in CD Projekt Red, who their previous game was literally considered one of the best games of all time in The Witcher 3. And so if companies of that ilk are able to launch a game in such a poor state, then what's stopping a game like this from launching in a poor state as well? Now, something else I am a little bit concerned about is to do with pretty much just the level design, considering the game is a lot more linear than we initially thought. Now, I don't think linear games are bad by any means. Some of my favorite games of all time, like The Last of Us and God of War, are all pretty damn linear. But I do think that it can be really hard to design games with linear maps like that. And in a lot of cases, it can really make or break those games if the map design isn't up to scratch compared to a lot of other games in those same genres. When we first saw this game, it did initially look a little bit more open world, whereas now that we know it is a lot more linear, that does have me just a little bit concerned that if it's not done properly, it might knock the game down just a few levels. I think you get a little bit more freedom when a game is open world because it allows players to explore on their own. And even if the map isn't designed as well as other open world games, giving people the freedom to explore can kind of make up for that just a little bit. Whereas on the flip side, if a map is linear, if the story overall is linear, then people do kind of need to stick to what the developers have made. And if that is the case, if it doesn't live up to the high standards that I think all gamers have these days, then that can really negatively impact the game. Now, to be fair, what we've seen so far does look really solid in my opinion, but considering the somewhat Souls-like feel of this game, it's going to have a lot to live up to if we're going to compare it to the level design of a lot of games in that same genre. A lot of the Souls games, you look at games like the actual Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, games even like Lies of P, and especially games like Elden Ring, although that's a little bit more open world obviously, those games all have some of the best map design that has ever been seen in the video game industry. And so when we are comparing a similar feeling game to those sorts of games, the map design and the overall development of the linear story is going to have a lot to live up to. And I just hope that they don't fail in that sense, because that can make a big negative impact when it comes to any game. Now, my last concern, but definitely not my least concern, is the potential for a bit of launch drama surrounding some of the stuff that has been said by this studio over the last few months and years. I'm not going to go into it too much because mostly I haven't actually looked into it myself too much, as well as that's not really what we're here to discuss on this channel. But unfortunately, Game Science has been linked with a lot of sexist comments over the last few years, mostly from a lot of higher ups at that company. And I think we all know that in this day and age, that instantly brings a lot of negativity and a lot of hate towards those companies, which in a certain sense is fair. I think obviously you should be angry with people saying stuff like that, but on the other flip side of it too, if it's coming from just a few rotten eggs at the top and people are then criticizing the entire studio, including every single developer and the actual game that they're making, it can bring a lot of kind of drama to that game and a lot of negativity that maybe isn't warranted to the actual game and developers themselves, when it is just, like I said, someone at the top who's made those sexist comments. There was a pretty similar situation realistically when it came to Hogwarts Legacy, where people were genuinely trying to cancel that game and trying to boycott it simply due to a lot of the stuff that J.K. Rowling has said, which, might I add, is fair enough to be annoyed about. A lot of the stuff she said is absolutely stupid to say, but it's so unfair for all of the developers who were at Avalanche Studios to be then getting a lot of hate for stuff that they didn't say themselves. Just because they are making a game in a franchise that J.K. Rowling made, that does not mean that they align with her thoughts. A lot of them have probably never interacted with her at all, and yet they were the ones getting hate, and the game that they were making was at risk of being boycotted and being an absolute fail, which means a lot of those people could have potentially lost their jobs, and that is definitely not fair considering they are not the ones who actually said what J.K. Rowling said. Now, obviously when it came to Hogwarts Legacy, that didn't affect the game at all. It was literally the highest selling game of 2023, but it did bring a lot of drama to that game, and I am just a little bit worried that it could do the same for this game, which again, although I don't agree with what the people at the top have said, that is most likely just the people at the top, and a lot of the developers working on this game don't deserve to be treated with a lot of hate that they are most likely going to get just because they are simply aligned with those same people. So that's something I'm a little bit concerned about, just the potential launch drama. And to be honest, I don't even think it is potential. I think it is almost guaranteed to happen. And for the sake of all the developers who did put their blood, sweat and tears into this game, even though they don't align with the thoughts and values of those at the top, I just hope that the game doesn't get too negatively impacted for the sake of those people. But that is it for some of my biggest concerns when it comes to Black Myth Wukong. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts as well, so be sure to leave your own concerns and stuff down in the comment section, or even if you disagree with some of the stuff that I mentioned, be sure to leave that down below as well. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.